A little while ago, I did a review on the Era frame from It's FPV. This is a new updated version specifically designed for 04. And what we're going to do today is give you a bit of an overview of this new frame, and we'll talk about the differences between this and the original Era that was released. Now, just to be crystal clear, the guys over at It's FPV did reach out and send me this frame over to take a look at. However, they've not paid me to make this video. They've not seen this video before it's been published. And as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. Okay, so the guys over at It's FPV have sent me their latest version of the Era frame called the 04 version. Now, it's specifically designed to be used with the 04 Pro air unit and camera. It has a tweaked design compared to the original Era that I talked about on the channel before. It's got a new cage up front and some tweaks to the carbon fiber plates to accommodate that, and it's been specifically designed for 04. Unfortunately, I don't think you can easily upgrade your existing Era just with the cage, because I think they've had to change some of the carbon fiber plates as well to accommodate it, but this new version is available directly from them. Now, I did a video about the Era before, but we're going to cover this new one again here today. When you get it, it comes in this nice box, and it comes with a nice picture of the quad up the top there, and then inside we have everything we need to build the quad. Now, one of the real big nice features of the original Era was its nylon front frame. Here I've got the frame off the original one. It was an incredibly tough front end, which gave a huge amount of strength, and we still have a nylon front end on this, but there's something rather interesting about that, which we'll take a look at in a minute. Now, walking you through what you get in the kit, we have that new front end, we have some feet, we have our wiring protectors for our motor wires, we have a bottom plate, we have our centerpiece for our arms. This has a little piece of foam in the middle to help with vibration isolation and just keeping it all tight when you assemble it. We have our screws and accessories, a couple of battery straps. They include a really nice sticky battery pad in the kit as well. And then we've got our arms, our top plate, and our mid plate. Now, they include everything you need in the kit to build the frame, and we'll take a look at all of that in a minute. But the really interesting thing I want to talk about first of all is this front end, because this has obviously been changed to allow it to accommodate that new 04 Pro camera, but whilst it's still made of nylon, it's made differently. This was molded nylon, as you can see there. This, though, is basically made with an SLS printer. It is powder additive manufacturing, and you can see that it has a completely different texture compared to the other ones. But this basically means, I guess, that they can make it in-house without having to mess around with expensive molds to get this actually made. Instead, they can actually use that SLS process for 3D printing. If you haven't seen how that works, you have a laser which shoots against powder, and you then basically laser the top and drop it down and create it, and then it comes out like this here. You can see it's got a completely different texture. We've got our inserts already in it there, which have been pressed in. It's still, though, made of nylon. It's still incredibly tough. Obviously, I can't comment on the strength of this new manufactured front end compared to the original. What I can say, though, is it still feels crazy strong, just like that original one did. And you're still going to have all that nice benefit that you had on the original frame. Now, you can see it is much bigger when we put it up against the front end on the original one. It definitely is a bigger unit overall. Very similar design. Really, it's exactly the same. We've got our fitment at the top here for attaching our mount, for attaching a GoPro. We've got our camera area on the side there, although they've tweaked it with the bits high and low. And really, yeah, it's just overall a little bit larger. Now, when it comes to the other parts, we'll just take a quick look at the arms and the plates, just so you know what sort of depth and sizing. We've got 4 arms included with the kit. These are quite chunky, as you can see there. So these are 6mm, and we've got our nice motor protectors there on the end. We've then got our top plate, and then our mid and our bottom plate. Let's get them all out, and we will check the sizing on these, just so you have that as well. Our bottom plate is definitely the thickest. I'm pretty sure that's our front bottom plate, because that's where our cage mounts, just like that. You can see that's a bit thicker, so size wise our front bottom plate is 2.74 mil. Our back mid plate is 2 mil, and then our top plate is 2 mil as well. Now, as I said earlier, they also have this centerpiece that goes in, and what's quite cool about this is you can see there's foam in the middle of this, and this sort of squashes up tight in the frame when you put it together. So for instance, when you put the frame together from scratch, you've got your pieces here with your countersunk screws, so that's your bottom. You then have this that goes in the middle, and your arms then go into that like that. And what happens is all of this locks in like that. And then we get our mid plate on like that there. And then our cage goes on like that at the front. Now, I'm not going to show you the whole assembly process on this as I do it. Actually, that's definitely the wrong way around. I'm upside down at the moment because that's the bottom of the frame, not the top. So actually, looking at it, it's that way around. That's what happens when you don't follow the instructions. So I'm not going to go through that a second. I'm going to go away and do it, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Now, before you put it together, you're going to need to pull in these pressed nuts that go into the carbon fibre. Now, they include 4 in the kit. There's actually 5 in mine. Now, I'm going to show you here how I did it. You might want to do it a different way, but the basics are, I've put the other plate against the bottom of it because it's got a smaller hole, and I'm just putting a screw through. And then what I'm going to do is put the press nut on top and thread it down, and then we're going to tighten that up with our screwdriver, just carefully making sure that we've got it in the right place, and then tighten it down. There we go. That's in. And what you can then see is that's pulled those nuts through. We're going to undo this in a minute. This is just done to give something for the screws to press against, but you have then the press nuts in the 4 corners where the arms go. Now, with regards then to assembly, what we're going to want to do is put in our standoffs ready for our flight stack, because you need to put them in now before you actually put the frame together, because if you don't, you won't be able to access them very easily. I used a couple of different screws on this one, so I've got different lengths here to undo. There we go. So they are now all pressed in. Now, the way this goes together is this side here has countersunk holes, and that's because that goes up against the tops of the arms. So this actually goes that way round. This plate goes underneath like that. Your arms go between the two, and then your standoffs will come through the top. Now, to be able to do that, what you're going to need to do is put in your screws for your standoffs now. You don't want to do that later. We've also need to add in a press nut for the center as well, but we'll do that when we assemble it. It's easier to do that then. I thought I'd do that though in advance. So I'm going to build this on a 30 by 30 is what my plan is. So what I'm going to do is put through my 30 by 30 screws in the outside 4. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 on this one. And you can see that there. And then just going to put a nut on each of these, which will give us the standoff height that we need as well from our carbon fibre. And we'll tighten them up. And that will be then ready for mounting our flight stack later. Okay, so I've got the stack screws through. We've got the 4 press nuts. There's one more to go in the middle, but we'll put that in a minute. Now, the next thing we need to do is put this together. And this bit's a little bit fiddly, because what we need to do is get our arms and our centerpiece on this. So I'm going to put this screw through the middle here and pop that in like that. And this goes, as far as I can tell, that way round there. And then what we do is put our arms in. I'm going to put a screw through there, And then what we need to do is start locking them in. Now, I found it's easier to get 1 or 2 in and then get the top plate on and then pop the other ones in after. So what we'll do is do that arm. We will do this arm. So that's gone in quite nicely like that. And then what I'm going to do is take our plate. We'll do these 2 up first of all, and then we will drop in our other arms in a second. Let me just get me screwdriver together because I have to change the end. There we go. So what we can start doing is popping that together there. So there's 1. There is 2. And this all works a little bit under a compression system because of the way it's been designed. I'm just going to keep that screw there in the middle a second. And then we'll use that press nut in the middle in a minute. So we've got then our other 2 that have got to go in. So we've got that arm that needs to go in there. And pop our screw through. Can take a little bit of pressing just to get it in the right spot. There we go. Okay, so got the 4 arms in. Now there is 1 more captive nut that I need to install in the middle. This is what goes through into this bolt here. This is what holds the center frame assembly together. I'm just going to do a bit of a turn on that to pull that one in as we've done it. There we go. And that's one of the ones that sort of just locks everything up nice and tight. I've pulled it probably a little bit too tight there, so we don't quite need that to go in that far. There we go, looking good. So that's that there. Now that is the main frame assembly together. We've got our arms in place, single screws all tightened down, and you can see that compressed piece there in the middle that goes through. Now the next thing we need to do is fit our camera cage. So that is this piece here. Now this goes on the front nice and easily, just like that. We've got some flat top screws included in the kit. These don't need to be very long. These just need to go in and hold the front cage assembly. So I'm just going to grab a few of these. We need 2 more. There's 4 of these that go in. Okay, so we are at the stage where it's ready for the top. We've got our flight controller stack holes. We've got our arms installed, our front cage, our 4 standoffs. Everything is fitted and in place. And then when we're ready to assemble, we would simply fit our top plate on there just like that. And then that will give us our full frame. Now, the next thing we need to do is install our 04 air unit and camera. Now, they include this little VTX and cam hardware kit with it, which has the correct screws. We also have some TPU pieces as well. These are designed to go into the mount at the front here. So you will see that we have these holes for these to pop into. So these pop in just like that. I'm going to assume we create it a little smiley face up and down. That's going to offer a little bit of vibration isolation. They're quite hard, so they're not going to offer a lot, but that allows us to mount that into there. And then in the kit, we've got some of the screws that we need to go in. The camera screws that come with 04 are not going to be long enough to go through this cage. So you're going to need to use the ones that come with the kit. Now, the basics are, this is designed to be able to mount here at the back, and it just fits in between the standoffs. And then our camera goes in the front. Now, I have made a schoolboy error at this point, and that is that the camera will not go through the back end. You actually, from the look of it, need to put the camera in before actually mounting the cage on the front. So I've caught myself out on that little schoolboy error. So what we're going to do is quickly undo the screws for the cage. It's always the same when you do a frame. You end up doing some things up and then end up undoing some of the things that you've done up to take steps forward. This isn't really a build guide. It's a guide of how I got it wrong is probably the right term to use. But this will only take us 2 seconds. So do note before mounting the camera that you do not want to mount the cage. You want to get it through. Here we go. Put them to one side. So there, we can now pop the camera in. Make sure you get it the right way round with 04 because you can't rotate the camera angle, which is a real shame on the 04 ear unit. So we can pop it in from underneath. Let's get it in place first of all. It's a little tight until we get it in. There we go. That's better there. As you can see, we've got it through there. And then there are some longer screws included with this kit for mounting into the camera. Now, let me just look. I'm going to assume it's those ones. We'll try these first of all. And then we'll see how we get on. Let's just line it up. There we go. I can see that hole on that one. Yes. There we go. So we can pop them in. We just need to find the right hole for the next one. There, you can now see that gets the 04 camera mounted in the front. If I just show you there horizontally, you can see it offers some nice protection on the camera on the front. And then depending on how tight you do the screws up, will give you your adjustability. With the multiple screw approach on 04, it's a bit more awkward to adjust than it is on other cameras. But there you can see that you can tilt it forward, we can tilt it back. So you can tilt it up as far as that there. Or you can tilt it there. So you've got plenty of options on this one depending on what you want to do. There we go. And then we can pop him in the back, mount our camera cage, and then we'll be ready to go. Okay, so cameras installed, ear units installed in the back. They do include a nice TPU antenna piece for the back as well. So that allows you to mount the dual antennas onto the post there at the back. I'm not going to do that now because this one isn't going to stay in this a minute. I'm going to rebuild this a little bit more later on once I get it up and running. But you can see the integration is quite nice. These are tight frames. There isn't a great deal of space in this frame. The 04 ear unit does fit quite nicely in there, but you are going to need to make sure that you do have enough space here for your flight stack. You might want to go with 20 by 20. It's your choice what you go in this. You can do it. Just remember that you will need to do that before you assemble that plate. You can't swap it. You can't take it apart and change it. It's just going to be a bit of hassle if you did need to swap it at this point. Okay, and the build is complete. As I've said, this isn't going to be a flying video. It is just to give you an idea of how it looks. I can't comment on what it's like for vibration isolation. Obviously, that is something that you'll only find out in flight. These TPU mounts are quite hard. I'm not sure if I'm going to call this a cinematic frame or not. It's definitely a flying frame, that is for sure, because the ERA flies really, really well. Whether I would class it as an out-and-out cinematic build where you're going to want to be able to have lovely footage from, I'm not 100% sure on that. Might be absolutely fine. You just remember with 04 that the gyro is very sensitive. You are going to need to make sure that you have your ESC PWM frequency of 48 kilohertz at least. But overall, it looks really, really nice. And if you're looking for a compact frame to get yourself 04 into, this is definitely worth a look. Now, as I did mention earlier, unfortunately, you can't just get this new canopy for the existing ERA and upgrade it. There are also changes to this bottom plate here as well. So for instance, if we just take a look, the top plate from the original ERA is exactly the same. The mid plate looks the same to me. that looks the same, but where the differences are is on this bottom plate. It's had to be a little bit longer. So if we just align it there on top, you can see that the original bottom plate stops a little earlier than the one did for the 04, and as a result of that, if you did want to upgrade your ERA, you're going to need a new bottom plate as well as a new camera cage. Okay, now before we get this in the air and take a look at some footage from the 04, I just wanted to talk about the build because I've thrown it together. I've not spent too much time on this one. It's built up with a KISS Ultra, the 20x20 with the Voltara ESC in there as well. That's what I'm going to be using on this build. I got a KISS Ultra video coming very shortly, finally being able to get in the air with it, and I'll talk about that in that video. We ended up going with the ZT Innovate motors, which are the 2040 kV 2207s. Its FPV do have their own branded motors as well. I don't have a set anymore because I drowned them. However, they make a good motor if you're interested in getting one, but that is the motors I've gone with on this build. And then we've obviously got the 04 Pro in the back. The cable was plenty long enough. Okay, so I'm down here now with the ERA. We've got the 04 camera installed. We're going to just take it for a quick couple of flights and see how it performs. Nothing too crazy. I'm down here at the beach, so I don't really want to risk losing it today. But as you can see, we've got the Pro Air unit in the back. We've got the antennas as shown on the bench. So let's see how it all looks. Okay, now this is some footage from my very first flight on the quad on 04 Pro. I do not have Rocksteady turned on at the moment. This was just some shakedown test flights just to get to grips with how it feels, how it was behaving. I was flying this with KISS Ultra, so I was also just making sure that everything there was behaving as I would expect as well. Now, I tried to keep the flights sort of just straight runs so I could have a look at how the frame and the camera's behaving with regards to vibration isolation. We obviously have had a lot of talk with 04 around how it behaves on frames. People are getting a lot of strange issues with the gyro stabilization as a result. This year is completely unstabilized. It looks fairly clean at this point, but what I'm going to do in a minute is put this same footage through Gyroflow to see how that comes out, and then I will have a look at how it looks with Rocksteady turned on as well, just to see how the DJI stabilization performs in comparison. Now, this was one of the first days that I managed to get out to fly because the weather here has been horrific. It was actually not windy for once, which is incredible. So what we'll do next is post the gyro stabilized stuff via Gyroflow, and then we'll take a look at how it looks on Rocksteady. Okay, now here is exactly the same footage that's been through Gyroflow on the stock settings. I've not changed anything. I just stabilized it. Now, it's definitely cleaner. There is the odd jitter that I'm seeing now and again in the footage. It's not as bad as some of the ones that I have seen from others, but I think from a frame perspective, it's doing a really nice job with the 04 Air unit. I've got no complaints with what the ERA is doing here. I think there's definitely some improvement that could be made by DJI on 04. You're just seeing the odd little twitch here and there after the gyro stabilization. It's going to bug some people, but not everyone. But I'm not going to put any of this down to the frame. What would be nice to see on the ERA would be some silicon mounts for the camera rather than you having to print TPU mounts. That may help a little bit too, but it certainly is not the worst I've seen, and I think it makes a nice little quad for the 04 camera. You do have props in view, so it's not an out-and-out cinematic frame, but it's going to get you some really nice footage, and you shouldn't be seeing crazy amounts of vibration. Now, this last bit of footage I want to show you is again on the ERA, but this time is with the stabilization turned on, which is Rocksteady. Now, again, I'm doing exactly the same flights, just back and forth on the beach, just to see how the Rocksteady stabilization handles it compared to what we were seeing before. It looks quite clean, although there is the odd little jitter here and there. But I think DJI is doing a good job. I'm not particularly concerned. We'll come over the water a little bit in a minute. This, I think, was my 4th or 5th flight, so I was getting a bit more comfortable with the build.
I always avoid water with new builds because I lost one once, and as a result of that, I tend to avoid with water until I'm comfortable that we're not going to get something silly happen. And you're starting to see here how it looks, and I think even with Rocksteady turned on, it looks really, really nice. I like how 04 looks in these conditions. This is a horrible grey day, very little wind, but it's certainly not the best light, and 04 really does look very, very nice indeed. It's definitely a step forward compared to what we had on the earlier 03. You're getting that much larger sensor, improved overall image quality in the live feed, but the DVR has definitely seen a nice improvement as well, as you can see here.
Now, if you're interested in getting the Era, it is available on the It's FPV website. There will be a link in the description. You can see you've got the Era and the Era 04. You can see they've added a bit of a write-up telling you what's changed. Price-wise, this frame is available for £86 in the UK. Price will vary depending on where you are in the world. There are a couple of other things that I haven't shown in this video. Some really nice little touches. Things like this antenna mount over here for your receiver antenna. And there's lots of different little 3D prints that are available as well. You can see here they talk about the 04 bottom plate front, so it's a larger bottom plate. You've got the 04 nylon camera cage, and they've got updated 3D prints for the 04 antenna holder, as well as new TPU camera inserts. Now, they do have some pictures on here, and they do go over the main specification of the frame, and it has lots of nice little features, as I said in the original video. So for instance, you've got assembly guide, you've got the build suggestions here as well, and they've even got a little here's our story bit and an assembly guide for the frame down there too. Okay, now just to share with you some thoughts on the new Era 04 edition. Overall, I really like what they've done here, but the only thing I would like to see is silicon mounts for the 04 camera rather than TPU ones. We are seeing issues with the 04 camera popping up everywhere with regards to vibration. I think it would be good if this frame was a little bit wider, just to offer a bit more space, and silicon mounts on the side just to try and offer as much vibration isolation as possible. But as you've seen in the footage, it's certainly not terrible. I don't think there's anything particular to this frame that is causing some of the jitters that I've seen. We know 04 is having quirks around this. I think it's more related to that. Now, this isn't an out-and-out cinematic frame, so you are always going to be slightly compromised. But overall, I think they've done a really nice job of converting it for 04. As I've said already, I like the Era because I like small, compact frames. They can be a bit challenging to build at times, but they do offer a really nice flight experience, and if you're interested in getting one, there will be a link to it in the description. Other than that, I really have no complaints. I want to say a big thank you to the guys over at It's FPV for sending it over. I do have another frame of theirs we're going to be taking a look at soon, so if you're interested in seeing that, please do check out the link in the description, and make sure you do check out a link to my Patreon as well as buy me a coffee. It is only through the support of my patrons I'm able to keep making content on this channel, and if you'd like to support us to allow us to keep making content in the future, please do have a look. I want to say a massive thank you to all of my Patreons. We would not be able to do this without your support. Anyway, that's it from me on this one. Stay safe. I will speak to you soon.